is going to have a PowerPoint presentation with some information that she's going to share with you guys. I'm going to jump in from time to time and just give a little extra 2 cents whenever. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to put your questions in the chat and I can answer them at any time, or we'll pause and ask if there's questions for you guys, okay? All right, cool. So Ms. Julie, I'm gonna hand the screen over to you.
Great.
And we'll go ahead and get started, guys. I'm also gonna put myself on mute because I have a kid in the background.
Can you guys all see my presentation? Okay. Hi, thank you guys so much for coming. It's really good to see you all here. And my name is Julie, and I am one of the team of people that you will see when you come to take the ELPAC. So this is a picture of me and my daughter, who is a kindergartner at El Granada. We're taking a funny selfie while taking a hike. And then the other picture there with the dog is my colleague Holly, who hopefully will pop in today, but you will see her too when you come to take the test, and that's her little puppy. She also has kids who've gone through co-side schools just like you. And so we just want to share with you some information about the ELPAC this year and basically give you some hints and tips to make sure that you can get as many points as possible on this test. So just as a reminder about the ELPAC, it is a test with 4 different parts on it. It has a listening, a reading, and a writing portion that are all on a computer, which might be new for you. If you didn't take it last spring, you may not have seen this version that's on the Chromebook. But when you come, we'll give you a Chromebook and you will take those 3 parts with your headphones in, just on the Chromebook. And then there's a last part that's a speaking portion, which you'll do with us. So you'll come into a separate space and we will do the speaking portion of the test. The way we're going to do it this year, because we're not on campus, is that you are going to get an invitation. You'll get an email, you'll probably get a text, or your parents will get a text and a phone call inviting you to come visit us at Pilarcitos on an afternoon starting at 1 p.m. And hopefully you can make that appointment time. If for some reason that time doesn't work for you, just let us know and we will find another time for you. We've got a situation that we feel like is pretty safe. You'll wear your mask. We have a really well ventilated room. There's just going to be a small number of people. But if you would prefer to take the test, if it's better for your family to take it on Zoom, that's an option too. So just we will schedule that for you. The test usually takes about 2 hours, but it is untimed. So you can take as much time as you need. And if the afternoon that we give you that first time is not enough, and it's best for you to come back to finish it, we'll find you a time to come back. Does anyone have any questions about sort of just big picture scheduling this year? Okay. If something comes up, just type it in the chat or raise your hand and we will answer it. So I want to give you some tips because like the ELPAC is just kind of a game and your goal is to get as many points as you can. And there are some things that will make it easier for you to grab some extra points, right? So first, this is the listening section. And a couple tips about this. Right here is a screenshot of what the interface with the screen will look like when you're in the listening test. And what I actually kind of like about the fact that it's on the computer now is that you can see that here on the left side is a portion where you would click to listen to the audio that you need to listen to. And then on this part on the right side is all the questions that go with that. And I find it really helpful to just pre-read the questions. What are you going to be looking for or listening for when you actually do listen to the conversation or the story or whatever it is in this case? And so read those first. These play buttons right here on the right side play the question for you. So if that's easier than reading it, do that. Then once you've looked at your questions, go over to this side and click play. But make sure that you're ready. You get to choose when you click play, but once you click it, you can only listen to it one time. So make sure you're ready. And then go back and answer the questions. You can even answer the questions, while you're listening to them.
Guys, make sure you get that what Julie said. Once you click play on the listening part, it's really important. You only get to listen to it once. So if you accidentally click it, there's no going back. So you want to really make sure you take that time to be ready before you click that play button.
Thank you. Yeah. And the one other trick that can help is that if you're not totally sure, I would sort of in your mind cross off ones that you're sure are wrong and then just guess from the remaining. So if I know that it's definitely not A for this one, I can sort of say, okay, it's not A, and then just guess between the remaining two. And you've got a 50-50 chance now of getting it right and getting those points. So that's better than just guessing at random. Okay, reading. The reading section, reading comprehension standardized tests are just hard. They're hard for everyone. And I think part of the reason that they're hard is that usually when we're in like English language arts class, right, you're supposed to be thinking creatively about the text and digging out meaning that's not really obvious. Not in these tests. You're just going for like the simplest, most obvious answer in a lot of cases. So these are kind of similar. There's usually a text on the left side and then all the questions on the right side. It often helps to just read through one time and then go look at the questions. And almost always there's a question that's sort of like, what's the big picture? So this one says, what is the text mainly about? I've added the circle, it's not normally there. But the mainly is saying like, what's the big idea? And you might be able to argue a lot of these answers. I could, but you want to pick the one that's like the sort of the most simple and obvious answer, right? So if I look back here, it says it's talking about Pluto. Did it disappear? No, it didn't disappear. It's no longer considered a planet. There's a little bit here about the International Astronomical Union, but it's because they decided conditions for planet and but yeah, Pluto's not a planet. So I can then look back here and say, it talks about the planets that orbit the sun, but that's not the big idea. Why an object in the solar system is not a planet? That sounds promising, right? Because this is really about Pluto not being a planet anymore. And so, yeah, it talks about features, not the big idea. It talks about the International Astronomical Union, but not the big idea. So I would select B. And then if you look at the second question, one of the things that you can sort of look for are keywords in the question prompt. And so in this case, it's asking about something that happened in 2006. So now I can go back to the text and say, oh, where was, I see kind of popping out 2006. I circled it. Okay, so it's really popping out now, but I think even if you looked at it on your screen, you would see 2006. That's where I want to look to try to find my answer. So if I look here, it says in 2006, the International Astronomical Union decided that an object in our solar system must meet 3 conditions to be considered a planet. Okay, that's what happened in 2006. Now let me find the answer that sounds like that. And so my options are, astronomers define the requirements for an object to be called a planet. That sounds pretty right, but let me just check to make sure none of them sound better. Astronomers discovered that Pluto had pushed nearby objects out of its path. No. Pluto was struck by a dwarf planet. No. Pluto's shape changed significantly. No. Okay, so it's A. That's what sounds like what happened after 2006.
So guys, I like to sometimes pretend, because I am terrible at taking tests like this, terrible. So I pretend, okay, there's this guy who made this test and he works on the 10th floor of a building, and he's like a middle-aged guy. He's kind of balding. He always wears a suit. He's very strict. And I pretend like, what would he want the answer to be? Because then it's less about me and more about like whoever made the test, what do they think the right answer is? And when I feel overwhelmed, I imagine this guy making the test and I pretend, okay, what is he going to say the right answer is? And that's sort of my like little tip to help me get through these questions.
Right, I love that. Yeah, I was thinking you have to think like the test creator. Yeah, who is probably a balding man in the 10th floor of a building. And that's going to come into play with the writing section too, because with the writing section, it's less about how creative you are and it's more about following the rules, because the person who is somewhere in an office building or in their home office grading your writing section has to follow really specific rules about how to give you points. And so you want to follow those same rules when you're writing up your answers. So in the writing section of the ELPAC, you'll have two big sort of essays, which are really paragraphs. One is about an experience and another is about kind of an opinion, something that you, whether you agree with something or disagree with something. And they give you really specific directions about what they're looking for. So the example here is an experience type question. And it says, think about a time when you learned how to do something new. What did you learn? Why did you learn this? And how has it been useful? So there's 3 sub-questions there. And there's almost always 2 or 3 sub-questions. And you want to notice those because to get the most points, you have to answer all of those sub-questions. And then underneath those questions or that prompt are some bullet points. And those bullet points give you some more things you have to do. So it says, your paragraph should be at least 3 complete sentences and should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It says, use description, details, and examples to make your writing interesting. The important thing there is just, you should have a few details, like add a little bit extra if you can. And then it says, check your writing for correct grammar, capital letters, punctuation, and spelling. And this is the part where it's easy to forget that, and then you just lose points automatically because you didn't capitalize the first letter of a sentence. So that's the kind of thing that you want to reread before you click submit to make sure that you've done all of those things. I'm going to show you a couple examples for this question. So here in the yellow is one possible answer to that experience question. I learned to bake bread because I love bread. It was hard work. Learning to bake is useful because you save money. It is fun to bake, and the bread tastes great. So did we answer all the questions? Well, what did they learn? Yeah, they learned to bake bread. Why did they do it? They did it because I love bread. So that was the reason why. And then what was useful? Well, it's very clear, right? It says learning to bake is useful because you save money. That's why. So they've answered all 3 questions. Is it 3 sentences? Let's see, 1 period, 2 period, 3 period, exclamation point. Okay, so it's 4 sentences. So it's at least 3. So you've gotten all of the points for having the right number of sentences. You can see that all the word letters that need to be capitalized are capitalized. Is everything spelled right? There's 1 misspelling there. That's okay. Your goal is to try to spell everything right. But if it's clear what you were trying to say, you will probably get all the points. So this answer would probably get all of the points for this question, even though there's 1 misspelling. And I say that not to discourage you from trying really hard to spell things correctly, but just to say that don't get so frozen because you're not 100% sure you're right. It probably will be okay if you've tried to spell it as close to how it sounds as you can. You don't have spell check on this test runs through a specific browser in a way that it doesn't allow like the Google Docs spell check that you're used to. So just be prepared that you won't have that tool for yourself. But if you have questions, there's a lot of things that we can't help you with. So I can't help you figure out how to spell something, but I can help you with technology. So if you're like, I really know I need to put a question mark at the end of this sentence, but I don't know how to do it on this Chromebook that you handed me that I've never seen before, raise your hand and we can help you with those kinds of things to make sure that you can have your paragraph look the way that you want it to. Okay. I have a couple other examples. So
So
They're,
Julie,
yeah,
can I just reiterate, you guys? So this is really important. Like if you're, I know that many of us are very timid about asking for help, and we're like, oh, I don't want to ask for help. If you don't know something and you're like, well, I don't know if they can help me on that or not, ask them. And they will say, gosh, I'm really sorry, I can't help you on that. Or they'll say, you know what, if you push control and this button, that's how you get your question mark.
exactly.
So it's hard for a lot of us to ask for help. I am terrible at it. But pushing yourself to ask because you're advocating for yourself to do better is really important.
And so the other things that I just want to show you from these other examples are like, this one is shorter than this one. It has 3 sentences, but it says, I learned to bake bread. So I've answered the what. Bread is my favorite food and I will save money. That implies why. I did it because it was my favorite food. And it sort of implies why it's useful, because it'll save money. But you can get more points if you're really, really clear. So if this same paragraph said, I learned to bake bread, I did it because bread is my favorite food, and it will be useful because I will save money. You're sort of like, you're really making it clear to the person in that office building that's giving you points that you're answering all the questions. So try to overdo it sometimes rather than underdo it. And then I want to compare these two. Okay, so this is really simple. It just says, I bake bread is good. 2 sentences, you're not going to get all your points, but you're going to get some points. This one is totally blank. That's 0 points. There's nothing, that's a definite no points. So don't be afraid. Even if you're not sure how you're going to answer the question, try to put something in there, because something is better than nothing, and you'll probably get a point. You might even get 2. So that's, just give it a try. And the other thing about these is nobody's fact checking them. You can make it up. You can talk about an experience that never happened. You can argue an opinion that you don't agree with. You can cite evidence that isn't real. It doesn't matter. As long as it's clear to the reader what you're saying, you're going to get the points. So in this one case, don't be held back by the truth. Just write what you can. Any other questions or thoughts about the writing section? All right, we're going to go to the speech section. So the speaking part is kind of fun. Kids usually do great in the speaking section. There's a couple ways that you can kind of just get a few more points and maximize it. One of the kinds of questions you're going to have is these funny sort of like role-playing questions, where we tell you about a situation that could happen to you. We have to say it just like that. And then you have to tell us what you would say in that situation. So here's an example. You missed what your teacher said about something special that will happen during the school day. You want to know what will happen. What would you say to your teacher? So that's the prompt that we'll say to you. And then you have to respond to us as if we were the teacher in that situation. And your goal is to be the most polite imaginary student that you've ever seen. So, you can kind of overdo it. It might not be what you'd really say. You might really say to your teacher, like, hey, what was that? And your teacher would be very kind and give you the response. But for
you guys would normally tell me, Blue Corner, what'd you say? You're not being you. You're pretending that like you're a kid in a show, like the kid who's like the most proper, kind of where everyone is like, oh, stop talking. Be that kid.
For the purposes of this, yes, absolutely. And really be like super specific. So you could say, can you tell me again? Or please, teacher, could you tell me again? That's a great answer. You'll get some points for that. Even better is if you're super specific. Teacher, I missed what you said about the special event. Could you tell me what will happen? Right? So try to use some of the language in the prompt to be really specific about what you're asking, if you can. Same thing here. This is one where it says, you want to know if your friend has finished working on a science project. What would you say to your friend? In this case, you'd probably say to your friend, like, you done? Right? Or I don't know what you would say, but it probably wouldn't be super formal, right? And you probably wouldn't be super specific because your friend would know what you were talking about. Well, your friend in the ELPAC is like, doesn't know what's up and needs it to be really spelled out for them. So try to be very specific. Say, friend, have you finished your science project yet? And then you'll get all your points, and your imaginary ELPAC friend will know what you were asking about. Does that make sense? And then there's this other portion of the speaking test, which is kind of silly. I'm a science teacher by training and I love graphs, but I'm not so excited that they're on the ELPAC, but they are. But you can get so much information from these questions just by looking at what's on the screen. So there will be some kind of question that shows you a pie chart or a bar graph, something, and then asks you to describe what it's showing. So this one has this pie chart, and there's a title that you can see here. They always have a title, and it says how Alvarez Middle School students travel to school. And then students at a school were asked how they traveled to school in the morning. The pie chart shows the percentages of different transportation methods used by the students. And then the first question is, what does the pie chart show about how students travel to school? Include details from the pie chart in your answer. Even if you don't know exactly what this is showing you, I would spring off of what's already here in the prompt. You can just say, this graph is showing how students travel to school in the morning. And then if you can grab something from here, a lot of them, or 48% of them, took the bus. Great, now you have a perfect answer. Just by grabbing things that are already there on the screen. And then with these questions, they always ask you to do a little bit more evaluation, and they ask you to decide whether a claim is supported or not supported based on the information. And that's just a really fancy way of saying, is this true? Do you agree with that? So in this case, the claim is more students walk to school than ride a bike. So hopefully you can go down and you can say, okay, I can see that it says 13% by bike and 8% by walk, and 13 is more than 8. So I actually think more kids bike than walk to school. And so a full answer would say the claim is not supported because 13% of kids bike, which is more than the 8% that walk. Great. But even if you don't, try to express opinion, right? If you're not 100% sure, be like, at least say the claim is true because it shows it in the graph, right? You'll get some points there. That's worth doing than just saying nothing.
Don't say, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Just look at the graph and be like, well, it looks like the slice of pie for the bike is bigger.
Yeah.
So maybe more kids bike. Just even if you're like, I have no idea, don't say it out loud.
And even if you look confused, this is the one place where I get to give you the points. And so I am just grading you on what comes out your mouth. And so, just try to say something. I can't give you any points for I don't know, but I can give you points for something. So yeah, give it a try. And then the last part of the speaking that is challenging, I would say, is that there are recorded presentations. And so these always take the same format, and there are some ways that you can kind of help yourself along. So there are always 3 pictures on the screen, and then there's some description of what to do. And so in this case, you can see that there's 3 different boxes with something sciencey going on. And then I will say, and it'll be on the screen, when the presentation ends, you will summarize, meaning that you will tell me what you heard, basically, the information you heard. You will explain evaporation and condensation, include all the steps in the demonstration, and use relevant details and clear language. So here's what to focus on. One is they want you to explain something. In this case, they want you to explain evaporation and condensation. Those are big words, and they want you to say something about them. And so to get all the points, you have to talk about evaporation and condensation. You will have a pen and a piece of paper to take notes. It might not help you to take a lot of notes, But what I'm sure will help you is if you just write those keywords down so that you can sort of like focus yourself on the fact that I need to know what I can get out of what I hear about evaporation and condensation, or whatever it is on the test that you will see. So you need to do that. And really importantly, you need to talk about all the steps in the demonstration. What does that mean? It means you've got to talk about each of the pictures. They're basically going to tell you about some kind of process, some kind of experiment that was done that's described in these pictures. And you want to then tell me what you heard about each of those pictures. So you should say something about this picture, something about this picture, and something about the last picture. And guess what? You could say something without even listening to the audio, right? So even if you like listen to the audio, you're like, I don't really have no idea what that said. When it's your time to summarize, at least describe to me what you see. Okay. So here I see there was some liquid on a heat thing. And then we heated it up. And then now there's liquid in both of the jars. Again, that's better than nothing, right? And what I see more often is that kids get a lot of information from the audio, but then they don't explain the pictures. And so you can't actually get all the points if you haven't explained what happened in the little experiment. So make sure that you're doing that piece. Anything you want to add to that, Erin?
No, I think that's great. And maybe like Julie said, if you write down those keywords, like you have to think about these test questions, guys, like a recipe. Like if you're gonna make a quesadilla and you leave out the cheese, it's not a quesadilla. So you have to say like, okay, what are the things I have to do? I have to say evaporation and condensation. I have to talk about all the steps, and I have to use language related to it. So as long as you're like, okay, I mentioned evaporation and condensation. I said in the first picture, the second picture, and the third picture. I might have burned the quesadilla. I might have messed up a little bit, but I got all my pieces. Yeah. So make sure you follow the recipe.
So those are all the slides I have, but I am happy to answer other questions that you guys have about the ELPAC or the process for this year, anything.
If you guys have questions, now is the time to ask. Feel free to unmute yourselves. You don't have to turn your screen on, but go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. If you want to put it in the chat and send it to me, I can respond to it. But we'll give you guys a few minutes to kind of think and formulate any questions that you have. I'm going to leave myself unmuted, but I have 2 children in the back that are schooling, so you will hear background noise, so bear with me. And if you guys don't want to ask questions today, or you don't have questions right now, you can always send them to me later. So here's a good question. When will the real test be? Julie, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we have middle school scheduled for March. Let me give you the exact date range.
I think it starts the 22nd, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I am just bringing it up right now. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly right. So we have a 3-week period that we will be offering appointments, invitations for testing. So the week of March 22nd, and then there's spring break. So then the 2 weeks after spring break, which are April 5th, the week of April 5th and the week of April 12th.
And guys, some of the questions that Julie shared with you today on the slide, there is a test prep, they're practice tests on the ELPAC site where you can go and do some of those practice questions to help you. I'm going to send out in an email again, like I sent to you guys with this information, this recording, and I'll also put the link for the test, the access to the practice tests, so you can go through and take a look at those if you want to. Also, if you want to set up an appointment to sit down one-on-one with me to go through some of those questions, I am happy to do that. We have almost a month, about 3 weeks, to help you kind of get a little bit prepared, practice. So I am happy to give you whatever time you would like, or we could even do it in small groups with some friends. But I'll share this recording and the access to the practice tests in another email to you guys. Are there other questions? Okay, well, Julie and I will hang out. Oh, there's another one. Great. So the question is there anywhere that students can have a hard copy of the writing and reading portion of the test? So they don't give the actual test questions in advance, but we can go onto the website to have sample questions that are going to be similar to what the test is going to ask. You want to add anything to that, Julie?
Yeah, I mean, so there's no way to print them during the actual test, but yeah, if it would help you to have it, we can support you, or you can create screenshots and print. Those are all options. I have a bunch of those too, so I can sort of feed them to you.
Yeah, awesome, great. So thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to show up today. It was not a required attendance, and we're so appreciative of you coming and really committing to trying to be successful. Julie and I will hang out for a few minutes and answer any questions if you want to hang back and ask a question. Otherwise, I'm here to support you and help you however you guys need it. And seeing Julie when you go to take the test, hopefully it'll be a familiar face. So it'll be a little bit less nerve-wracking to have someone you've seen and heard speak before, hopefully. Julie, do you have anything you want to share with them before I send them off if they want to go?
No, just that I'm really glad that you guys are here today, and I look forward to seeing you in the coming month.